What's going on, guys? So today I want to talk to you about a few different stories about the budding corporate technocracy government that appears, in my personal opinion, keep in mind, just my personal opinion, but it does appear that there is an effort to create a corporate government. And that is just my opinion, but we're going to talk first about this secretive, Peter Thiel founded tech Bilderberg, quote, group that is moving up in the world. And so what this is if you've ever heard of the whole Bilderberg group where a lot of powerful people go to meet secretly for off-the-record talks about whatever it is they want to talk about, this is a tech-related one. And you'll note that a lot of the known names to have attended this secretive meeting called Dialog, those people all are very closely, not all of them, but many names of the released names, and most of the time they're not released, but many of the names we know who have attended over the years are now part of the current administration. You know, I'm just going to tell you what I think about everything, and that's just the way I'm going to do this video. An uncut video where I'm just going to talk about several articles up here and how many of them may fit together in some ways, as it mentions, where well-connected tech folks sit around and discuss their naughty ideas that the American peasantry just wouldn't get. What a guy. He's got some plans for us, doesn't he? So, anyway, he's getting a ton of contracts for surveillance, all of this stuff. Everyone knows he's one of the big founders and investors in Palantir. Apparently, Dialog is a group that wants to now establish a permanent physical campus right by the DC Capitol. You know what's happening in DC right now? Well, if you're not familiar, well, now they're going to have National Guards, which they already have, but until now, they have been unarmed. And so being unarmed, it wasn't seen as threatening. It was there for assisting law enforcement. Posse comitatus, all that. But now they're going to be armed. Apparently, the U.S. Marshals have allowed them to carry some kind of Sig Sauer pistol and some other artillery. So that should be good, even though it looks like in the last 30 years, DC violent crime has actually been at a 30-year low. And just the last year, it has gone down over 20%. So to say that this was necessary, I don't think so. But we can continue talking on about this. So this group, apparently, there's been several articles from mainstream media, Routers, Axios, many others have talked about it, and they're saying it's a bit of a less transparent, intellectual, dark web tinged version of Davos, World Economic Forum. And it does sound like they have a lot of things they want to talk about off the record, and it is a bit secretive. So this is a news story here from August. Here is their website, at least according to the authors of the article. They believe this is the website for it. Possibly, and maybe not. They never got a response. Let's go ahead and talk about how now there's an interest in Peter Thiel seems to be making a lot of moves. Now, of course, he is behind the scenes more, so you're not going to see him front and center with many of the other people who are part of the administration, but you better believe he has a hell of a lot of influence. And for those who don't know, check out my earlier video called Freedom Cities. Make sure to check that out. I do a lot of deeper coverage into this, and it's really worth a watch if you haven't seen it. But he's also founded PayPal. One of the ways he got wealthy was he founded PayPal. Now he's a billionaire. He actually worked with Elon Musk to found PayPal. Just so happens all of that good Doge work they're doing, the whole so-called cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, which in the end has only seemed to include surveillance contracts for Palantir. Funny how that works. So, as we can see, it looks like they have an interest in Native American reservations. That's quite interesting. In fact, there are some interesting stories about government projects in Native American reservations. I do recommend looking into a journalist who is no longer with us called Danny Casolaro. Now, definitely look into him. There was a special on Netflix on him. Anyways, he was covering the story about these companies that worked for defense, and they did all kinds of projects. They invented secret weapons. They performed all kinds of things they couldn't do on U.S. land. And when you do something on a Native American reservation, well, you can get outside of the regulations that hold many interested parties today from doing these things. So they can actually experiment with things that they otherwise could not touch on U.S. land. So that is what makes this so interesting. And unfortunately, that journalist that was found in a bathtub dead, with his wrist slit all the way down to the bone. So not generally the kind of thing a person like Danny Casolaro, who was he was known as squeamish around blood, and most people who harm themselves in that way are not going to go all the way to the bone and as badly done as this was done. And he was talking to all kinds of sources about these projects on Native American land. So this really brings my attention to what kind of projects are they doing that they just can't do on U.S. land. Makes me wonder. But of course, I don't think it's anything to do with weapons or anything like that. I just have to wonder, what is it? And in the Nerd Reich, this website, it actually has an author, Gil Duran. Definitely check him out. He's also talked a lot about freedom cities as well. So you'll be able to learn a lot from him if you want to read some of his work. But they're calling this some kind of a tech Zionism, a tech form of Zionism. So, as we all know. It's an extreme belief in their technology plans. And of course, we know, as mentioned in my Freedom Cities video, Trump promised to create 10 cities on federal land, described, some would say, as fascist cities, corporate-run, autocratic dystopias. But of course, Trump calls them freedom cities because when you put freedom on it, it's gotta be good. It's gotta be good. There's no way you wouldn't want to live in a freedom city. But if you have to put the word freedom on it, I have to question why. Why not just call them what they are? Smart cities run by corporations, because that's how they're described. Moving on, we see another article from Mother Jones on the very same subject, how the tech moguls want to build a crypto paradise on Native American reservation. So, of course, the Danny Casolaro story, completely unrelated, but I was just relating to some of the projects that have happened on Native American land. And there were several murders that were being investigated by Danny Casolaro that related to the cover-up of some of these projects. Now, of course, this is an entirely different thing. This would be more like what sounds like a smart city, so it would be more of a legitimate, non-murderous, hopefully, kind of a plan to build a crypto utopia, like mentioned with Freedom Cities. Most likely want to get around the regulations that happen on U.S. land. Of course, Trump has shown his support because, of course, Peter Thiel was one of his big donors. And as mentioned, now we'll have Army, National Guard on the streets that are now going to be fully armed. Very interesting. Also, just so happens, I covered this not too long ago, the U.S. Army happened to also appoint, speaking of the National Guard, Palantir executive as lieutenant colonels in the U.S. Army National Guard. Funny, now we have the National Guard on the D.C. streets that are now going to be armed. We also know that there's a rumor going around, in fact, and this rumor is going around on social media, where they're talking about how they are told, at least those who are working in D.C., this is just a rumor. Just want to make that declaration. It's just a rumor, not saying there's any evidence, because there's not. But they're saying that they essentially want to put Peter Thiel in charge of D.C. Now, I don't buy that. I haven't seen any evidence of that. But it is interesting that you have National Guard armed now on D.C. streets. You also have, of course, now you have Palantir staff who are also going to be lieutenant colonels advising the National Guard. Kind of interesting. not necessarily related. And now there's also advisors telling Democrats they need to bow down to this tech fascism stuff, that they need to just, go along with it, that they need to be a part of this problem, this techno-feudalism, this techno-corporate dictatorship type of stuff that it sounds like we're headed towards. And it's very concerning stuff, and sometimes I like to come out with a video like this just to talk about some of the things I've been reading about and I'm concerned about, because now we even have people advising Democrats to just go along with it, that they need to go along with it, that Silicon Valley has gone to the right because the Democrats were not just doing whatever they wanted, were not falling in line with their freedom cities, their smart city plans, which not everybody wants to live in a smart city. You should be able to have that choice. But it sounds like you may have trouble even camping, because now it sounds like people who aren't living in a home, aren't paying a mortgage or rent, now there's an executive order to round those people up and institutionalize them. If you didn't hear about that executive order, I do recommend looking into that as well. These are things that don't happen overnight. And Americans, as someone in this article mentions, need to stop being so incredibly naive. I am telling you, Americans, I really overestimated the intelligence of Americans. I feel like there are so many that are trusting everything that is happening. And somehow, the world I grew up in, people did not trust their government. They did not trust their politicians. And yet, that's what we're seeing today. At least many are. So, it's just crazy. I just think it's absolutely crazy that people are falling for it. As this essayist and poet, who was once expelled from the Soviet Union, said, quote, "You Americans, you are so naive. You think evil is going to come into your houses wearing big black boots. It doesn't come like that. Look at the language. It begins in the language." It's true. These things don't happen overnight. Today, it may be rounding up the homeless, those who aren't able to make enough money or possibly live in an area too expensive to afford a mortgage or rental payment, or maybe live in a van, a camper van. That should not be illegal. You should not be tied to the wealth interests of others. That's not a free country. There's nothing free about that. Rounding up people just because they're poor, that freedom is the ability to actually choose the life you want to live. If you round up people just because you're poor, well, they're not living in a free country at all. And that's the truth. So tech billionaires are now accused of working to implement a corporate dictatorship. Is there a lie there? It certainly does sound pretty accurate. I mean, if you look at everything that's happening, I'm going to continue reading through these stories to tell you more about it. But it does sound like it. If you read into it, they're putting Palantir people, they're putting the head of Meta executives, people like that are now National Guard lieutenant colonels that are going to be advising National Guard. And National Guard just happens to be on DC streets. And now we're hearing they're going to 19 other states. That just came out today in the news. This is not the kind of thing that ends overnight. Once you start implementing this whole new way of life, this doesn't just stop. And do you think that when crime goes down, do you think the National Guard's going to leave? Don't be naive. They could leave. They very well could leave, but I wouldn't count on it. So the U.S. government has snapped up 10% of Intel for $8.9 billion. And this could be a good thing. I don't really know. I do know that there was just a handout for, I think it was $6.9 or $7.9 billion before this, and now at this point, I don't know. I don't really agree. Obviously, I'm against fascism, but I don't know. Maybe it is a good thing to not just hand out grants to these big corporations, because I don't trust the big corporations either. But this way you get 10% equity. I don't know. Don't think we're going to see any benefit from it. Now there's also going to be these obviously everyone knows of Meta glasses. There's going to be other glasses as well. This appears to be another set of glasses, and what this is going to do, these are going to be AI glasses that you put on your head, and it's going to listen to everything that you are saying, everything others are saying, in order to analyze everything and basically think for you. And what's interesting about that, and the reason I say that, is they've done studies, and the more you rely on AI, the less really you actually lose the ability in your brain to think for yourself. Not to say that AI is bad. There's definitely very real world uses for it. But the way it's being implemented, I am not a fan of how it's being used for surveillance, how it's being used for all these other things. Of course, used for, medical breakthroughs, things like that. I'm always for that, how it's able to detect cancer before a human doctor can. Great work with AI there. However, I don't know how I feel about these AI glasses listening to everything you say. And also, the real world effect, I do recommend looking this up, of people who rely on AI too much, they do lose the ability to think for themselves. Do you really want these techno overlords to be doing the thinking for you? I personally do not want that. I personally would like to continue thinking for myself, and I'll use AI as I need it. Continuing on, this is an interesting story. So a developer is now jailed for taking down an employer's network with a kill switch malware. So basically, he coded something into the system that if he lost access to his credentials, that it would run and spawn up this application that would have these endless threads that would continue using more and more memory to wreak havoc and basically crash everything. So it was a Java application. Now, the sad thing is, not the sad thing for him at least, not the sad thing for the company because they caught him, but the sad thing for him is he left his name in the name of the malware. He actually named it after himself. So it was called IsDLE enabled in AD, which stood for Is Davis Liu enabled in Active Directory. So the malware was named with his own name. Very silly idea there. Not only this kill switch that it overloaded the network, prevented logins for thousands. He also uploaded the malware with his own corporate credentials, so that's another silly mistake. And don't mind my microphone today. I am traveling at the moment, so I will be back to my better microphone later, but I did want to make a video and chat with you guys about some of these stories. Anyways, very easy to catch this guy because he, of course, used his own corporate credentials to upload the malware to set it up and then also put his name in it. So much for a talented developer. I mean, I guess he's still a talented developer, but you would think a talented developer would know better than to name his malware after himself. So Elon Musk has said that even if AI ultimately proves to be bad for humanity, he still wants to be there to see it. That must be nice to have that many hundreds of billions of dollars that you don't have to worry about what happens to the rest of the world. So, anyways, now we see a court case came out. This is going to really affect Americans and their privacy rights in a negative way. So, it looks like the Trump guy, he's secured another victory for the Doge group. That Doge group that supposedly was going to cut all the waste, but all it's done is really turned into a massive surveillance network, in my opinion. And I really saw that from the very start, and I talked about it, but it looks like that's what it is. Anyways, so much for efficiency. Efficiency is turning your country into a surveillance state, I guess. So here's another article. This was just a good one to kind of tie together the other ones as it talks about how all of this data is now being flowed into the same network, so it's going to be able to be accessed from all of these different agencies, or at least the ones in the intelligence community that can now access all kinds of stuff from healthcare to taxes to behavior to social media is even mentioned. everything from all the data brokers they have. And I even predicted who was going to get the contract, and I was right about that, by the way. My video, I predicted who was getting that contract. Of course, it was somebody who's been mentioned in the video. But yeah, so anyways, all of this is going to be coming, and especially with AI, it's further accelerated the ability to go through all of this data all at once. It's going to really make things super dystopian. This is it, guys. This is it. This is our techno-feudalism future. I hope you're ready for it. It's going to allow for digital profiling in every way that could affect your ability to get for a loan, that could affect your ability to do so many different things. So that is how surveillance changes behavior. You don't have to worry about a social credit score if you can't even get a bank account, if you can't even have something else cut off from you, the ability to get a loan through a government loan or something. You know, what good is it to say you don't have a social credit score if you basically have the same kind of effect? And it does change behavior because people are afraid to lose access to a decent quality of life. So yeah, that's how it's all coming together. Here's a document from that. This was released publicly, of course, and that's why we're looking at it. It goes into some of this this corporate information that is able to be shared. The Senior Advisory Panel on Commercially Available Information, that's what that CAI stands for here, where you see the CAI throughout this article, or this document that was released to the public. So yeah, also Peter Thiel's talking about what he was asked whether he's ushering in the Antichrist, and apparently he's going to give a speech about this, or at least a talk on how tech could bring in the Antichrist. So that's great, huh? How about that? But it was interesting when he was asked that question, and he didn't really seem to be able to answer it quickly about, you know, humans, are they going to be all right? Are they going to survive? And he didn't really have a quick answer on that one. In good news, I want to end it on a good note, so we're going to talk about the fact that the DC Appeals Court did shoot down a T-Mobile claim that they had a right to sell your location data without your consent. And so, of course, that's a good thing. But you know what? In the midst of everything else, is it really that big of a thing? But it is something good news. I try to share good news as well. Of course, today I had a little bit more to critique, of course. But if you're not aware of it, in the U.S., ISPs, internet service providers, are actually legally allowed to sell your data without your consent. It's just usually the case. Now, apparently in this particular court case, it is not the case. So that's what I got today, guys. Make sure to like the video, leave a comment. It helps get this video out further by the algorithm, and leave a like, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos and coverage, and as well as tutorials on how to protect your security and privacy. Things are looking a little bleak today, but you know what? We're going to find solutions, and we're going to be talking about solutions as well. So make sure to stay tuned. And if you want to support the blog, you can go to bmc.link/politictech, and over at I2P at righttoprivacy.I2P. And I will be back with a better microphone coming up, and I will see you guys soon in a video on how to protect your security and privacy.